The escalating confrontation between the United States and Iran has entered a new and potentially more dangerous phase after President Donald Trump issued a stark warning that the Iranian government could soon face even more powerful military strikes. Speaking during a press briefing at the White House, Trump declared that Iran would be hit very hard if it continued actions that the United States considers destabilizing in the Middle East. The statement came after several days of intense bombing campaigns carried out by U.S. forces and allied aircraft targeting Iranian military infrastructure. According to defense officials, the operations focused on strategic locations believed to be connected to missile systems, weapons storage facilities, and logistical networks used by Iran's military forces. Trump described the strikes as a necessary response to what he referred to as Iran's bad behavior, accusing Tehran of supporting armed groups across the region and threatening American interests and allies. The president also suggested that additional targets are already being evaluated by military planners and could be struck in the near future if the situation continues to escalate. The warning has significantly raised concerns among international observers, who fear that further military escalation could push the already tense situation toward a broader regional conflict involving multiple countries across the Middle East. Over the past several days, the United States and its allies have conducted one of the most intense bombing campaigns against Iranian-linked targets in recent years. Military officials say the strikes were carefully coordinated using advanced aircraft, precision-guided munitions, and intelligence gathered over months of surveillance. According to sources familiar with the operations, the targets included missile launch facilities, underground storage depots, radar installations, and command centers believed to be connected to Iran's regional military operations. Analysts say these sites play a crucial role in Iran's ability to coordinate long-range attacks and supply allied groups across the Middle East. Satellite images released by independent monitoring organizations showed visible damage to several strategic installations. While the Pentagon has not released full details of the missions, officials confirmed that the strikes were intended to weaken Iran's operational capabilities without triggering a full-scale invasion. The scale of the bombardment suggests that Washington is attempting to establish clear military dominance in the region. However, experts warn that even limited bombing campaigns can trigger unexpected reactions, particularly when they involve a country with Iran's complex network of allies and proxy forces. One of the most striking elements of Trump's remarks was his firm rejection of the possibility of negotiating with Iran under current conditions. The president stated that there will be no agreement with Tehran until the Iranian government fundamentally changes its behavior. Trump argued that previous diplomatic efforts had failed to prevent Iran from expanding its military influence in the region. He criticized earlier agreements as ineffective and insisted that the United States would not repeat what he described as the mistakes of the past. According to the president, Iran must first stop supporting armed groups in neighboring countries and halt activities related to missile development before any negotiations can take place. Until those changes occur, Trump said, military and economic pressure will continue. This approach reflects what many analysts describe as a strategy of maximum pressure. By combining sanctions with military action, the administration appears to be attempting to force Iran's leadership into a position where negotiations become unavoidable. However, critics warn that completely ruling out diplomacy could increase the risk of prolonged conflict, making it harder to find a peaceful resolution to the crisis. Iranian officials responded quickly to Trump's warning and the recent wave of airstrikes. Government leaders condemned the attacks as acts of aggression and accused the United States of deliberately destabilizing the region. In statements broadcast on Iranian state media, military commanders warned that Iran would defend itself against any foreign attacks. They also indicated that retaliation remains an option if the bombing campaign continues. Iran has historically relied on a mix of conventional military capabilities and regional alliances to respond to external pressure. Its arsenal includes ballistic missiles, drone technology, and naval forces capable of operating in the Persian Gulf. Officials in Tehran emphasized that the country would not surrender to what they described as intimidation or military coercion. At the same time, they called on international organizations to condemn the strikes and prevent further escalation. These responses highlight the growing tension between the two countries and raise the possibility that the situation could quickly spiral into a wider confrontation. Iran occupies a critical position in the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. The country sits near several of the world's most important energy routes, including the Strait of Hormuz, through which a significant portion of global oil supplies pass every day. Because of its geographic location and large population, Iran has long been one of the most influential countries in the region. Its government has developed close relationships with political movements and armed groups in multiple neighboring countries. These alliances allow Iran to project influence far beyond its borders, shaping conflicts and political developments across the Middle East. For this reason, tensions involving Iran often have far-reaching consequences that extend beyond the immediate conflict. The current confrontation with the United States, therefore, has implications not only for the two countries involved, but also for the broader balance of power across the region. The United States is not operating entirely alone in its response to Iran. Several allied nations have been closely coordinating with Washington as the situation develops. Some countries in the Middle East view Iran's military capabilities as a direct threat to their security. These nations have supported efforts aimed at limiting Iran's ability to expand its influence and strengthen its missile programs. At the same time, certain European allies have urged caution, warning that continued military escalation could destabilize the entire region. Diplomatic leaders in several countries have called for renewed dialogue and international mediation. Maintaining unity among allies may become increasingly difficult if the conflict continues to intensify. While some partners support stronger military action, others prefer a strategy focused on negotiation and de-escalation. Financial markets around the world have been closely monitoring developments in the confrontation between the United States and Iran. Historically, geopolitical instability in the Middle East has had a direct impact on global energy markets. Oil prices often react quickly to any threat involving the Strait of Hormuz or other major supply routes. Traders fear that military escalation could disrupt shipping lanes or damage infrastructure connected to oil production and transportation. In addition to energy markets, investors in stock markets and currency markets are also paying attention to the crisis. Periods of heightened geopolitical tension tend to increase uncertainty, leading investors to move money into safer assets. As a result, financial analysts are watching statements from Washington and Tehran very closely. Any sign of further escalation or potential negotiations could trigger immediate reactions in global markets. One of the greatest concerns among international observers is the possibility that the confrontation between the United States and Iran could expand into a broader regional war. The Middle East is already home to several ongoing conflicts and rivalries. If multiple countries become involved, the situation could quickly become much more difficult to control. Iran's relationships with various groups across the region could potentially draw additional actors into the conflict. Likewise, some countries that oppose Iran's influence might support stronger action against Tehran. Diplomats warn that once conflicts begin expanding beyond their original scope, they become far more dangerous and unpredictable. The escalating tensions with Iran are also shaping political debates within the United States. Members of Congress from both parties have begun discussing the implications of the administration's strategy. Some lawmakers support the president's decision to apply strong military pressure on Iran. They argue that the country's missile programs and regional alliances pose a significant threat to American interests. Others have raised concerns about the risk of a prolonged military confrontation without clear objectives. They are calling for greater transparency about the administration's long-term strategy. Public opinion may also play a role in shaping future decisions, especially if the conflict continues or expands in the coming weeks. As tensions continue to rise, analysts are considering several possible scenarios for how the situation might evolve. One possibility is continued escalation, with both sides increasing military operations in response to each other's actions. Another scenario involves a shift toward indirect confrontation, where the United States and Iran avoid direct clashes but continue applying pressure through allies and regional partners. A third possibility involves diplomatic intervention by other global powers seeking to prevent a wider war. International mediation could potentially open a path toward negotiations. At this moment, however, the future of the conflict remains uncertain. What is clear is that President Trump's warning that Iran could be hit very hard has significantly raised the stakes in one of the most sensitive geopolitical confrontations in the world today.